Welcome to today's webinar, everyone. Again, so nice to have you here with us this morning. Today we're talking about connecting up government and building local, using predator-free New Zealand as our case study. And such a useful and fascinating case study it is. I've really enjoyed hearing a little bit more about it. Our kōrero today is going to help us shine a light on how to decentralise funding, how to shift processes and power, and we'll talk about how a collective participatory approach across local, regional and national systems has enabled success in doing things differently. No small order, actually. But not only that, you'll hear about how a values-led approach has helped navigate diversity and complexity to push through the hard stuff, as well as how important and useful guiding principles are to have. And we'll also talk about governance and different governance approaches, including when the governance lever is useful, which is possibly not as often as some might think. So let's meet the panelists. Kia ora, Estelle. It's been lovely learning a bit about the things you're involved in. He maha ngā pōtai, you wear so many hats, so best I hand over to you directly to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Kia ora, Denise. Ko Estelle Pera Lesk toku ingoa. Ko motu pohue, te mauka, ko te ara akiwa, te moana, ko te rau aroha, te marae, ko tahu pōtiki, te whare tūpuna, ko kaitahu kāti mao moi waitaha me whakatoia ko Ngāti Runui, ngā iwi. My name's Estelle and I'm the chair of the Bluff Hill Motopoi Environment Trust. I was born and raised in Bluff and have lived here all my life. Very much. I'm also a member of our local runanga, Te Runanga o Awarua, one of the 18 papatipu of Ngaitahu, the southernmost runanga in the world. I'm a director on Predator Free 2050 board, the national board, which is it's a new appointment and I've really learned a lot and I've been enjoying that mahi. I'm also a member of the Southern Conservation Board, so yes, I do wear a lot of hats and I work for the department on predator-free rakiara mahi at the moment, just building that bridge between Papatipu Runanga, Te Runanga and the department, Te Papa Atawhai. I'm also busy on the Kakapo Recovery Program, so that keeps me quite busy apart from my other hats. I work for our trust as the chair and have been for around 8 years now. The Bluff Hill Multiple Environment Trust has been, was formed in 2008 by a group of concerned locals who saw the silent forests on our beautiful motu and decided that we needed to do something. So we went to the Department of Conservation. We'd been seeing titi being predated on our hill by stoats. We went to the Department of Conservation back in 2008.
I'm just going to stop you there, Estelle. Yes. We'll come to your full story in just a moment. So lots of hats, and I want to introduce you, Brent Bennett as well, who also wears many hats, one of which is leading and managing the government's response to Predator Free 2050. Tēnā koe, Brent. Please introduce
Tēnā koe. No, I sound really boring compared to this.
No, not at all.
I'm coming to you from not so sunny Wellington today, where we've been living for the last 2 years, but my name is Brent Bennett. I work for the Department of Conservation, and I suppose I'm a bit of a conservation stalwart, and that I've been doing it for 25 years, I added up, which is a bit scary in itself. Most of that on Stewart Island, so I've only recently come up to Wellington, and I'm now the program manager, so the overarching coordinator for the Predator Free 2050 program with the department.
Awesome, welcome. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that in a few moments. And Megan Courtney, one of our valued Inspiring Communities team members and a dear friend and colleague too, who, when Brent was looking for models that he could use to scale up collaboration across government, reached out to. And together they worked to create a collaborative partnering framework that would bring multiple national stakeholders and departments to the table and actually set a shared agenda for change too. And this is the stuff that Topdown, Inspiring Communities' new consultancy now does too. But I'll tell you more about that later. Megan, how are you today?
Kia ora koutou, Megan Courtney Tokonga, coming from you for what is a very sunny Nelson today. It hasn't always been the case of late, but it is today. Hats, I guess, that I wear in relation to IC are many, some of them are less exciting than others. Certainly working with Brent to kind of frame and shape what collaboration might look like in the predator-free context is pretty cool. I also kind of take a coordinating role in behind the IC team. As you know, we've got lots of different team members in different parts of the motu, and IC is doing some amazingly diverse things, from the CLD clinics to small practice groups to kind of our consultancy arm, a whole range of things to kind of promote and support community-led development across the motu, our movement for change.
Awesome. Welcome everybody. So let's get started. Estelle, one of the key features of your mahi that I just only know a little bit about, but one of the things that really struck me is the role of connections and relationships and the weaving of these, actually, the processes of weaving to really affect change. You know, from Whenua Hou to the Predator Free New Zealand Board and all those other hats that you wear. Tell us something about how that's happened.
Well, I guess from early on with the work of the Bluff Hill Multiple Environment Trust, there was a requirement for us to engage with and include our Papatapu Runanga representatives. And because of that, and with the support of the Runanga, we were able to go to local government, to the Southern Regional Council and the Invercargill City Council, and express our concerns around the state of the whenua. And they listened. They heard what the issues were that we expressed, and they offered the support that we needed to do what we're doing and to reach the goals we've reached this far.
Awesome. Tell me more about what happened as they listened. What happened after that?
Yeah, so back in 2008 when we formed, we were told by the department that there was nothing they could do financially to support the recovery of our motu and the restoration work, but what they could do was provide logistical support. So using that, they helped us form the trust. They helped us with logistical work around setting up trapping lines and all the work that needed to be done. And then we, as a tight-knit Bluff community, brought the volunteers. And it took a few years to build that volunteer base, but now we have more volunteers than we actually have work to do, and it's a really good problem to have.
Yeah, totally. So that must really speak to the relationships, right? To be in that position. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I guess we all know that relationships are really complex and it's really important, and I guess the biggest frustration I have is trying to manage so many different relationships. But with the Runanga backing us and the obligation and the requirement of the Crown to actively protect taonga, they really couldn't say no to us, and they didn't. They supported and loved everything we do and still do, and I guess that's the leverage that we had, and we've been able to grow and develop. And of course, it's meant that I've had lots of other mahi to do and have grown in my abilities around that sort of work because of the predator-free Bluff work, which was all volunteer work and still is. We're 100% volunteer workforce. So
it's like everyone's got something to offer, but also something to learn by the sound of it. And I understand that the department actually, now you tell them what you want, they listen.
That's right. Yeah.
And they act. So that's a really big shift, isn't it?
It certainly is, and it's the same for the Southern Regional Council and the Invercargill City Council. Wow. It took a lot of work, but we got there. And like I said, when we're protecting taonga species like titi, which we have some of the only mainland colonies left in the whole country, we're very lucky. We have an amazing motu, and we're really keen to protect it. Mō tātou a mō kauria muriaki nei, for us and our children after us, which is a ngaitahu whakatauki that we use in all of our work.
Right, and those numbers are really impressive too.
Yes, yeah, we have we've done translocations of South Island robin. we're one of the only places left in Southland where you'll have a huge podocarp forest that still meets the sea, like the outer islands around Rakiara, and it's protected with intensive predator control and suppression, and yeah, and people, we're one of the most talked about reserves in the country. When people visit our reserve, they can't believe the number of birds.
Yeah, it's incredible. Living proof of how important the wisdom and expertise that sits in community is too, right?
Absolutely.
And actually, maybe not just that, but actually, you know, how it's woven into the expertise of government, I suppose, and the obligations that you sort of alluded to there for the treaty. Have you got an example of where council and the department have actually really listened and acted?
Oh, probably many examples actually. There's been times when we've required on the ground support for spikes in rodent numbers, and the regional council who do rodent monitoring on our hill three monthly and have done for the last 13 years, which is no cheap undertaking for the council, but they do it for us so that we can adjust our pest control methods to suit what rodents are in the environment. And we did have an issue with the South Island robins coming in and getting into some of the, trying to get into the bait that we were laying. So we put the call out, the department, the council, they all came to our rescue and helped support, because we have such a huge trapping network. So there's lots of examples. Whenever there's a funding opportunity, they contact us straight away. So, and if they have staff available, they're on the ground helping in any way they can.
Lots of learning, as you're going along, and the key really seems to be about the working together in a local partnership, you know, with iwi as well, so not just with the state apparatus, I suppose. Tell us a bit about the shared vision or agenda. You know, it takes time, like you say, but it seems really necessary.
Yeah, so I guess our shared vision is for Southland. It's for Mirihiku, and having seen what we've been able to achieve as a 100% volunteer workforce of committed locals that aren't going anywhere, that are committed to doing what we're doing and increasing our footprint. The councils and the department really have no choice but to get in behind us, and which they have. And now we're moving towards predator-free Southland goal, which is, it's actually progressing quite quickly too, which is really exciting. And we're building a native plant nursery that can accommodate the production of a huge number of plants for restoration. I mean, it's great to have protected habitat, but you've also got to have the habitat to protect. So we're creating more habitat to create those safe corridors. And yeah, well, we've got huge ambitions and goals. We've also got a large community that's backing us 100%.
Aye, yeah. Well, big congratulations, Estelle, and thank you so much for your work. Ngā mihi mahana. Really warm thanks for your korero this morning. You're living the action of nothing about us without us, it seems to me, and of the value of listening and nurturing the wisdom, as I said, creating space for that local knowledge and experience to shine. And Brent, apparently you do as you're told now. You're going to build on that for us. Kia ora anō. You've long been part of the journey to understand and grow CLD here in Aotearoa, and we've really appreciated in inspiring communities your insights, stories and wisdom over the years. I understand that in your predator-free mahi deep in your intrinsic in your predator-free mahi is the understanding of a range of intersections, not just some of the things that Estelle was talking about, but some of the different ways of making sense, the frameworks, if you like CLD and collective impact, and picking up on some of the stuff that Estelle was talking about, that shared agenda. I'd be really keen to hear your views on that. Can you give us a bit of a background on predator-free and tell us what you're thinking?
Thanks, Denise. Yeah, I have been involved in this community stuff for a while, because I think we find that communities and conservation go hand in hand as we go forward, and you can't do one without the other.
Totally.
Actually, I like your story, Estelle, as you go through, because it always reminds me that Motupohui or Bluff is in a way the ideal community-led development example, but not by design, but of necessity. that it developed. And it's a really good reminder that at a local level, it's often hard work, and we shouldn't underestimate that. It's really hard work that requires perseverance and passion. So it's been good to be reminded of that again, because you can get a bit removed when you're operating at a national level. And I'm not quite ready for that slide yet, but I'll get there. The Department of Conservation is the lead government agency for predator free, and across the board there's about $200 million per annum worth of investment in that space across about 26 national agencies and entities. And my role and my team's role is around setting the strategic direction and the connection and coordination across all of that system, which is really important. So the strategy, which is on the picture there, got released this year, and it took 2 years to develop because we built it from the ground up, from the people up, and really went out and understood what people thought predator free was about and what was important. And what we've done within there is we've really drawn on collective impact and community-led development as key models to build into that strategy. So I can go to that slide. Thank you. So just to give you the bit of background, this is the why of predator free. There's 4,000 of our native species in trouble in New Zealand, and these are the things that make us New Zealanders, make us who we are, give us our sense of identity. And a quarter of those are at real risk of extinction. So the biodiversity world is not all bubbles and roses. It's we're in a serious biodiversity crisis that we're fighting at the moment. And possums, rats and stoats, the targets of Predator Free 2050, are the main culprit in this decline. And look, I've been in conservation 25 years, and we've been doing this activity for 25 years, and we're still in the same boat. So we've still got a quarter of our species facing extinction. So that's where Predator Free 2050 came from, this disruptive thinking, this understanding that we needed to do something really different. So this is where we arrived. So this is what we're trying to achieve through Predator Free 2050. It's not about killing everything. It's about an envisioned future of people and nature together, both in the remote places, but also around our cities and our towns. I find it a real beautiful vision. But the nice thing about having clear targets like that, or what this has enabled us to do, and tracking back through much closer targets, is allowing people to understand what action they can take without us having to control them. Now, this lack of this distribution of power and control becomes really important in this space, and that clear vision really enables it. And I'm drawing on a conversation I listened to with Mark Cabage, who's a Canadian community development collective impact guru, the other day, and he put through these provocations out, or observations, so I'm going to try my own little series of provocations in this talk. And one of them is that one of the observations I've had is that complex problems often exceed the mandate of any one organisation. They often require multiple organisations to deliver on them. And that lack of perceived mandate by any one agency often leads to inaction. So we get no action because no one feels they've got a mandate for complex problems.
Very familiar.
Yeah. Provocation, but a familiar provocation.
Mm-hmm.
So Predator Free 2050 is organised into 6 work streams, which are up here, but they're guided by a series of principles. Our role is to connect the system across, and all of our decision making is driven by these principles, and we built them from the ground. I think principles are really important, but if we follow the principles in this place, some of the solutions are almost paradoxes. So in this space, we had a requirement to make local place-based decisions. So enable local people, local iwi to have decision-making capability at place. But we're also trying to drive a nationally connected and coordinated, linked together national response. So in some ways, we often see that as a one or t'other. Do you go local or do you go national? My second provocation is that actually we have to learn different ways of thinking. We have to learn how to do both. So we have to allow national joined up connectedness as well as local place-based decision making. So it's a paradox to solve. It shouldn't be one or other, but a one and other. That's my last slide, so you'll get past my talking soon. I wanted to touch on governance, because as we've gone through predator-free and in my history and environmentalism in general, is that there's lots of discussion around governance and lots of discussion around control. And I think corporate governance models are jumped to a bit too quickly. So this is my provocation or observation number 3, is that I do suggest we jump to corporate governance way too quickly, and corporate governance is well developed and an easy model to get. Social and environmental governance is actually still a developing field. Now, I think that we jump to governance when actually what we're seeking is community. So I think we want a community of action or a community of shared vision to enable us to have a community-led response. So with those 3 observations or provocations being inaction from a lack of formal mandate, wicked problems requiring different thinking, and seeking community ahead of governance, then I'll wrap up my little talk.
You think you'll wrap up? I think we need a little deeper dive here, because these provocations, really fascinating points and challenges and provocations in there. The question would be how, inspiring communities more and more is asked about the how. So when we're talking about, let's say, this model that's up now, governance, how do you actually get past that? How do you grow that community first? Or how have you with Predator Free?
I think we often call it a shared agenda or a shared vision. I think that's once we have a commonality of vision that we're after, or a commonality of purpose, then you can create community around it. I was thinking of the predator-free Rakiura example, which I worked on for a few years, and Estelle's working on now, is a really clear purpose and outcome, and it's enabled 12 different stakeholder groups, from community conservationists to businesses to deer stalkers, to all come together, and potentially quite conflicting viewpoints, but with that shared value and vision, they're able to connect and start to drive community. I think and I think you can go far on that sense of community, and I just think we get tripped up often on thinking that the first step we have to do is create governance. I honestly think governance is a response for when you're managing millions of dollars and you've got legal requirements. Before that, I really
quite often, yeah, I think so. Sounds, because there has to be tension in those groups. And Rakiura is a place of many groups. I've only been there the once with you, but yeah, many groups. So the tensions between those groups, between the decision makers who might want clarity, and people wanting to go at different speeds and all those things, but also enabling diversity to shine, especially when they might be across the different ends of a spectrum. How do you sit with that in this space?
Well, it's sort of vital, isn't it? And we want to get away from that cookie cutter response and think everyone has to be the same, or every site has to be the same. Actually, I sort of celebrate that difference. If you can build in that local response, you can build in the uniqueness and the power of that local response. Gosh, Westland's so different from Auckland. Why would you expect it to be the same? So I do think that strong, I keep coming back to that shared purpose and shared vision does allow you to build around diversity. But I also reflect on something we were discussing the other day around the continuum of from competition to collaboration. And you've got competition on one hand through to coexistence, through to collaboration. you can operate across that spectrum as need be. It shouldn't all be collaboration. It's not necessary in every situation, and it shouldn't always be competition. But there's value in all that, and I think you can actually hold multiple parts of it at one time.
Yeah, I totally agree. Megan and I talk about this stuff all the time, and how you move up and down these spectrums. You know, there is no one solution, like you say, not just because places are different, but all sorts of things are changing all the time. We all have different resources. So an incredible skill set, though, I think, and we'll just even getting to the shared vision and a shared agenda is an incredible skill set, along with everything else that has to happen from there. We're going to come to Megan in just a moment. Ngā mihi nui, Brent. That was really interesting, and thanks for responding to those wicked questions potentially that you got at the end there. I really love that focus on how we need community, and that's probably predictable. I'm hoping also that people out there are really enjoying the conversation, and we're seeing some really good questions come through. We're going to get to those in just a moment. You can send those through, post them through on the Q&A, and we'll get them to them soon. Before that, though, I'm going to go to Megan. As I mentioned before, you've worked with Brent, so you've got a bit of an insider-outsider kind of perspective on what's being talked about today. And you probably heard, as I did, not just the shared vision principle of CLD in there, but the working to the strengths as well, and probably other things too. Tell us what you're thinking and hearing and what you want to say today.
Yeah, definitely want to tautoko everything that Brent and Estelle have already said. And I just wanted to make one little quip on the governance point that Brent made as well, because I think we see that at a local kind of community sector, community systems level as well. Often people say, oh, we have to create a trust or an entity so that we can go and get money before they do anything. And it's like, actually, no, do the doing first and then wrap that stuff around. Because we often notice that some people want to do stuff, right? A lot of people want to do stuff. They don't want to sit in endless meetings and come up with, trust deeds and all sorts of other stuff. So yeah, galvanizing effort by getting people to do stuff and doing it together really matters. That was just a little segue into the two things that I did want to kind of focus on today. A couple of comments. I wanted to think a little bit more about the kind of coming together we've been seeing of collective impact and community-led development, but also about, and reflecting on last month's webinar where we kind of presented some key shifts that we observed after talking to 70 people across the motu about life in lockdown and how local systems did get self-organised to do some fantastic stuff, and make some links between the shifts that we pulled out there and what I've been seeing in a light touch way through Predator Free. So firstly, around the kind of evolution of collective impact. And I know it goes back to 2011 now, and like everything, learning by doing over time, things have been moving. But I wanted to pick up on a couple of comments that, actually I'll start with community-led development before collective impact. So community-led development, or CLD, as we kind of refer to it and confuse people along the way. So CLD acknowledges, it's a place-based focus. It acknowledges the deep and long-standing connection of tangata whenua to the land and enhancing outcomes for people in place. But CLD is about an and, so it's very much about tangata whenua, but it's also about the connections of everyone in a community organisations, local central government, residents, all the different people that have a vested interest in that place, and the weaving and the interconnections. So CLD, a framework for kind of collaborative place-based working that kind of takes everyone into that tent. So collective impact, as we know, a kind of model for, bigger scale interagency kind of collaboration. And we've seen that over time, and I think picking up on the paper that Mark Cabage and Liz Weaver wrote a couple of years ago around collective impact 3.0 and how that's evolving. Because what I see there, and we can hear it in the kōrero today, and Brent mentioned and, so much of CLD is about it depends and ands. So again, we've seen collective impact kind of moving from a management paradigm, but also acknowledging it needs to be a movement building paradigm. It's not an either or, it's an and. And similarly, you need a kind of common or shared agenda, but community aspirations are also important, again, an and. Shared measurement, absolutely use all the data and science we can to kind of help plan our way forward. But actually that has to be coupled with strategic learning. A lot of the stuff we only know in hindsight, and we need to build that into our approaches. Mutually reinforcing activities being a key platform of collective impact, but actually we also need to pick out some high leverage activities. What might be the 2 or 3 things that a group of us can get in behind to make change, acknowledging that actually the deer stalkers and the shellfish collectors may have a different way of actually thinking about what they may do to eradicate predators in their place. So both and again. Continuous communication, collective impact platform, but actually you also need deep, authentic collaboration. Relationships totally key in that space. You get to know people, not just the agencies and what they're doing. And again, backbone being a big part of collective impact. And they're moving and seeing that as needing that backbone support, not just to be technical services, agendas and pulling together plans and data and monitoring, but actually it's a container for the deeper change, bringing together different worldviews, lots of brokering and wavering, as Brent kind of mentioned. So more and more seeing that, you know, this is a journey. And we can't just focus on the technical stuff. It's messy, long-term, lots of ups and downs, and really important. So collective impact, community-led development. A couple of comments in on the systems shifts. So yeah, 6 that we pulled out from the hundreds of pages of notes that we pulled together over those conversations. And some people have said to us, oh yeah, they're very high level, and you know, how do you put those into action? Well, actually, I think we've seen through Predator Free that lots of these kind of platforms actually are already in action, and they're not, you know, can't do, they actually can do, and people are doing them. So how we build on the practice that's already here in Aotearoa. So I hear here when Brent mentioned the principles earlier on, taio in place being a principle that drives the importance of local as well as kind of national. Whānau hapu, iwi express and kaitiakitanga, and communities taking action as 2 kind of key pathways where those things intersect. And it's about, you know, encouraging diverse action at multiple places and levels. And I think it's really interesting that Predator Free's been doing a whole lot of stuff and investing a whole lot of money for the last few years, but the strategy's only come this year. So we don't have to start with a strategy and then create. We can actually do these things in a non-linear kind of fashion. The next point about respecting and recognising difference. And I think we've heard both Brent and Estelle talk about the importance of context, and people and places start from where they are. And that's actually just an accepted way of a business as usual, really. No cookie cutters. The next shift there around people and valuing relationships, etc. I've observed trying to get hold of Brent for the last couple of years. He's always in a different part of the motu. So actually spending time talking to people where they are, listening, not taking out your agenda, but offering some ideas and seeing what comes back, and crafting and co-creating as part of that is really important. And again, with the national kind of level collaboration of collaborative groups that we've set up, making them 2-day hui, not just rapid fire 1 day. So you've got time at night to actually go out for dinner, have a glass of wine, and actually talk to people and find out about their journeys and what they are. Because in this work, it's not contractual obligation that gets you through, it's relational accountability. So probing processes that build both. Embedding collaboration, we've heard that, you know, kotahitanga is a key principle. And yeah, taking time to understand that we need to build processes that bring people together, not just resourcing projects, because actually we've got to make time for both parts of the journey, and not rushing things. You know, I would have thought that a whole lot of stuff may have happened much further and faster in the national space, but actually you've got to work at the speed of the partners, and it takes as long as it takes. And being comfortable, even though you've got, you know, people behind pushing, that this is okay. It takes as long as it takes. Risk, I think we've got lots of examples of Predator Free stepping out of BAU. Trust and faith in relationships and places, driving funding, as well as some of the data and science, because both are actually really important. And that commitment to create a new playbook, because you know that the old one hasn't worked, but actually taking time and just giving a whole lot of stuff a go to see what that playbook needs to look like. And the last one there about building local economic resilience and redefining shovel-ready. Lots of different examples here that I can see, but one that I just wanted to note was, you know, environment's a key lever, but it can actually be a way to embrace a whole lot of others. And I think, you know, reading in behind the announcement in July about Ngāti Awa receiving about, I think it's about $5.5 million, announced as the first iwi-led partnership, predator-free partnership, was about leveraging both PGF and conservation funding. But underneath all of that, it was about enabling Ngāti Awa to reconnect iwi members with the land, with their taio, supporting their kaitiakitanga roles, and helping them reach their aspirations to care and restore the taio in their place. So yeah, lots of things to think about.
Lots of things to think about. Thanks, Megan. Ngā kia koe. Really insightful. I think sort of one of the things that I was hearing in there too, that the much work towards bottom up meeting top down, or is it really top down meeting bottom up? It's about being prepared to change anyway. If you're going to collaborate and work together, you're going to accept each other's contributions. We all have to be up for changing, you know, all the partners to come together equally. And also, I guess what I was hearing in there is about diversity and collaboration, and how variation is not the same as duplication, which may also be a Mark Cabbage thing in my head from many moons ago. Thank you so much. Any thoughts, Estelle and Brent, as Megan was going through that? You got something to say, Estelle?
Yeah, thank you, Megan and Denise. I took all of the kōrero so far, and yeah, I completely agree that community-led development is absolutely key to, well, for Predator-Free 2050, it has to be a big component of our huge ambitious goal. Kaitiakitanga, of course, for us as iwi and as the community of Bluff is what we're achieving. Manaakitanga, of course, supporting our community to be able to become kaitiaki of our whenua. Whanaungatanga, we're sharing all of our efforts with the community. We've got so much support for what we're doing. Mātauranga is being relearnt. You know, a lot of that's been lost down here, and we're able to learn from our kaumātua who are engaged with everything we're doing as well. Most of our volunteers, or many of them, are retirees who are teaching all of our younger whānau. Haumaritanga, you know, where the mental health and well-being of our community is being supported by our efforts as well. So it just leads into so much, and of course the mana that our community has because of the efforts that our community are making. So it ticks so many boxes, you know, having this community-led project.
Yeah, awesome. I love that, Estelle, the layering and the weaving, and how there is no one right way. Amongst many things that I could say about that. That's diversity and collaboration again, I guess. I'd be interested though, let's just push it a little bit to explore conflict and collaboration, because that makes it sound like it's all really sweet, and Brent made it sound like it wasn't always. So Brent, there are lots of really diverse interests, right? The hunters, the conservationists, those that are pro and anti-1080, all of those different things. How do you bring and hold those diverse interests together for shared good? I know we touched on this before, but that nationally, both nationally and in local places, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's hard work, I think.
Good point.
Anyone said it was easy. It's funny that people often come together through conflict. You know, there's a point made or a proposition put on the table. In conservation, we hit it all the time, be that you know, if we talk about aerial 1080, that always is a conflictive sort of statement, and you know, we'll look at tar control at the moment, and it brings people together often to fight. But if you can harness that into seeking the commonality, and I think that's really important as a facilitator of those sorts of meetings, and doesn't come easy, and it takes time. And if you can find the commonality of what they're after and the little bits you can do together, you just find those tiny little things you can agree on and do together. It starts to, well, it goes back to what Megan says, it starts to build relationships, and relationships start to build trust, and trust starts to allow pace and expansiveness. So it's an old saying of slow down faster, you know, slow down and look at the relationship and the little things that you can start to do together to build that.
So many good points in there about starting small and doing it with each other, including the people that you disagree with, right? And how do you find that common ground? It's not easy to find the time to go at that pace. And it's not easy to change headspace around being transactional either. That's a whole another thing, I suppose. Yeah, we've got a question from the audience, which is really interesting. It sort of leads on from that. This person is saying, this is very interesting, they say. I'm keen to know how national policies and relationships can truly support local initiatives and local support national, so local supporting national as well. So that two-way street, the reciprocity. What support do government agencies and local communities need for that to happen? Who would like to give that a go? Brent.
I'll make a start, but I'm sure Megan and Estelle will chip in on that. It's I think everyone went because that's a really challenge. That's the very challenge of this whole conversation in question. Is how do we create that space? And I suppose in the predator-free world, what we've been trying to do is define at the national space by bringing people together in a collaborative sense using a collective impact model, is understand that the national thing is not a place-based response. The place-based response will be guided by the local community. So really our national work is around coordination. So it's around I mean, we've got 25 national agencies working on predator-free, $200 million. If we can coordinate that, we create leverage and we create much more effectiveness. But the application of that at place needs to be guided by some local mechanism that brings collaboration together at place as well, because it can't be a council. It can't be the iwi by itself. It's got to be that full sense of community at place to understand what's required there and how can that deliver. And it links into, I was reflecting a lot on what Megan was saying about don't make your response linear. It's got to be non-linear but adaptive, because you're going to be going at different paces everywhere, and I think that's okay, and it's just that understanding that that's okay is perhaps a key step towards us enabling that.
I love it. That's okay. What is okay? What's good enough? Megan, do you want to have a quick response to that or add your 5 cents?
Two thoughts. One is this is no place for control freaks. And I think if you want to work in a space where you have power and control all of the time, you'll just have sleepless nights because this isn't the space for that. So you have to, and acknowledging that different people and personality types, we actually have to put different people in some of these key roles to hold that, because this isn't just a traditional management kind of function and role. So there's a different kind of skill set that sits around this being important. The other bit that kind of going back to the kind of conflict in national and local stuff is I think around this need that we have to claim and prove success all the time. And I think this is often where politics gets in the way, and not just at central level, but at local level too, about who achieved what, and that was because I did that. If we can get to the we and we did it together, it takes out I think, for me, collaboration is actually a risk mitigation strategy. So the closer those relationships we risk together, but also we reward together. So, I think if we can take out that need to kind of claim, that kind of helps bring local and central closer together too.
Absolutely, and they're really related, they're not being a control freak and the need to, well, the not needing to claim. We've got another question here that says, I'm loving Estelle's comments about the wider ripple effects of what the CLD mahi is making possible. I like the word possible too. What about Brent's sense of wider ripple effects from predator-free? So this is a question for you, Brent, on how government operates. For example, are others, I guess in government, looking to your approach as a model, or is it too messy to go there, inverted commas?
I was hoping that was for Estelle, and I was going to...
Well, we can get both of you.
Look, it does ripple. It's early days in predator-free, but already we're starting to see a growth in conservation funding. There's a rippling around scale of investment, which is different, but the models are starting to gain traction. The central government wants to see a joined-up government, but the biggest barriers I've seen to a joined-up government or across government agencies is a lack of the nuts and bolts. People want to do it, but they don't know how. And it's very first steps that we're starting to understand here. To be honest, we've been building the plane as we're flying. I know that's an old and overused metaphor, but that's what we've been doing. And we're starting to effectively show mechanisms for cross cross-government, shared agendas, interagency response, much stronger collaboration in the science sector. So it is rippling out, it's already creating better tools and outcomes for communities. But I love the social and cultural ripples as well that are starting to happen all around, as in what happened in Bluff, Puhui, but is also, I'm seeing across a whole variety of communities around that social cohesiveness, the fabric, the ability for hapu and iwi at place to start to exert kaitiakitanga. There's so many ripples. But yes, for the mechanisms of government, early days, but starting to get a proof of concept around what's possible.
That's awesome to hear. It's so good to get good news, isn't it? And government often responds to what happens in communities, you know, so it's great to see that moving through. But Estelle, tell us your perspective on that. What are the ripples that you see? Because you're working with a lower level, not necessarily lesser important level of government, local government, but also the runanga and different organisations. Do you see kind of organisational ripples there as well?
I do. I think the impact of social media, love it or hate it, is amazing for supporting Predator Free 2050 from a community led perspective. And I think because of that, the government agencies are starting to realise that, you know, we're doing this with or without you, and preferably with you, and they're coming on board. It's also enhancing their mana. The regional council and the Invercargill City Council, our local TAs are all promoting us. They're creating programs that include us. Invercargill City Council has a Plant Your Population program where they're going to plant 50,000 trees per year, which is the population of Mirihiku, to support, and they're working in collaboration with our trust to get volunteers to plant, and other organisations throughout Mirihiku as well. So that they're seeing the success that we're having on social media and the support from the community, and they're leveraging from that too. So it's reciprocity. What we're creating, they're leveraging off. So that's a really good example. And same with the Department of Conservation. We do beach cleanups, and now the department are promoting that for us, and creating posters and all of the stuff that we need to drive these community initiatives that they're backing. So it's enhancing the mana of these organisations. That's standard way things have always been done is not necessarily the way they're doing it anymore, and it's really amazing to see.
So good to hear, Estelle, the mana enhancing approaches there, and also the recognition that we all have different things to offer. We can work to our strengths, and we can do that better when we collaborate, you know, when we don't have to do the things we're not as good at. So I love that. It feels also a bit like almost a culture change in terms of how we do things around here, kind of culture. So that's awesome. We have another question here, and it's, does our CLD approach mean that government agencies have to be less stringent about funding criteria for community projects so that communities have more space to design the right solution for them? If so, is this happening? Megan, do you want to respond to that? That government agencies might need to be less stringent around funding criteria for community projects so we have more space and communities to design the right solution for us.
I'll have a crack at that, and I'm sure Brent will have some additions from the predator-free perspective as well. Just want to pull on one thing that came out of the Shaping the Future research was that kind of need to go fast and go slow, and the barriers that it actually creates by having kind of tight funding deadlines and quite tight criteria for anything new to emerge. So just wanted to kind of, and I think in those kind of contexts, we see, you know, to need to have shovel ready and to get things going, that privileges the existing structures and organisations and doesn't provide time and space for new kind of collaboratives or new ways of thinking that often require some capacity building to even get to good applications. So thinking about not just funding projects, but what might be the pre-side of, you know, working arrangements that are needed to be supported ahead of bigger projects. So in short, my answer is yes. I think we need some more flexibility and rethinking around all of that stuff. And I think I also noticed that there's a hell of a lot of money going out at the moment. And I just do wonder about, you know, what's the kind of reflective learning that's going into all the money that's going out, so that we can actually iterate even over the next 18 months to make sure that we're learning from what isn't hitting the ground in the way that we'd hoped. And that's a local kind of national joined-up conversation too, because government, to all philanthropists to sort this out on our own, we all need to be part of those kōrero.
Yeah, I like the way in my mass evaluation background, I suppose, about the reflective space too, and how we actually iterate really consciously, intentionally, our own practice-based evidence, because I think you're right. The shovel ready and lots of funding privileges the things that are already there, which is the status quo often. And anyway, Brent, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Of course I did.
Silly.
This is a fantastic example of my second provocation, because it shouldn't be one or the other. It shouldn't be how do we enable communities to have space to design, or how do we meet the requirements of the Public Finance Act. It should be how do we enable communities to have space to design and give the public confidence that their money's been spent wisely. Now that's the challenge for us to solve. And I think the Jobs for Nature sort of response, the investment that we've got at the moment is teaching us some lessons in that space. But let's keep reframing those wicked questions into that and space, and then we'll start to get the right solutions.
And they'll be different in different places at different times too, right? So there is no one size fits all. Well, it might be, but it's not going to look good on anyone.
No.
Yeah. Anyway, we have another question, which might be the last one as we're coming towards the end, I think. So this one is really good for you, Estelle. What advice do you have for community groups working with runanga, especially when runanga are so under pressure to respond to many agendas, requests for involvement? Gosh, that's true, isn't it? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I guess a good example is the fact that I wear so many hats because I represent our runanga. And we seem to be like the same faces at every hui. I think this is a very common theme around the motu. And so I guess it's something I've struggled with for some time in this kaupapa. And it's I think what I'm trying to do is shoulder tap any young rangatahi or pepe or young ones that are interested in this kaupapa, and nurture them, support them through their studies. We have a local institute that has a degree in environmental management course, bachelor course, and any ngaitahu or any mata waka representatives that do this course, I try and identify them and support them in any way I can to come into the fold and support their runanga. So I guess it's a really difficult one to answer. Kai is always a good way to engage with iwi. Koha, go along and have kapa and meet with runanga, kanohi ki te kanohi. It's the way it's done, and it's how you approach runanga for support. Identify someone who has particularly who is a kaitiaki, and that you can learn from and teach and include. That's probably the best advice I could give is to identify who they are within the hapu.
Yeah, really.
It's complex.
Really complex, I think, a whole webinar almost on that. I know in our work up north, people are often saying that, and it's that time thing that we've been talking about, the pressure to be transactional, to get things out of people, really extractive, sometimes the Pākehā system, a whole bunch of different things there. Look, I'm getting a prompt now. So thank you all for your kōrero today and what we've been talking about. We have a couple of final words in just a moment. There's obviously a closing announcement sort of coming up here, but let's just go for a quick round. What would you say to the people, the listeners, that are the things, the key final words that you want to pass on to people today? We'll start with you, Megan.
Just build from where you are, find points of light, find alliances, and start connecting and working together, and just know that keep the faith. If you trust the people and the process, the rest will follow. That's my mantra.
Hi, Brent.
I think I would reflect that this is hard work, and it's messy, and that's okay, and that's what we've got to be prepared for. And it is about evening the playing field on power and control, making sure that you're distributing control and you're distributing power and making it much more even. But the rewards of that are phenomenal. We really go much further than we have before. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent. And Estelle, any final words?
I would just say that this is an amazing journey, and it's as much about the journey as it is the destination. Predator Free 2050, we may not all live to see, but it's not all about us. Mō tātou a mō ka uri, a muri ake nei. It's for us and our children after us.
Aye. And their children, and so on and so on. Eh? And very much, Brent, about power and participation, which just happens to be the title of the next webinar. So that's a very nice segue. We've actually had so much success with these webinars this year that we're extending them to the end of the year. And the next one is the one that you can see on your screen. This is about power and participation, often the biggest elephant in the room. Who's got it, who hasn't, how can we use it authentically to enable more inclusive engagement, participation, all those things, including the resourcing that Estelle was talking about. The same people are shoulder tapped again and again as well. So we've got two communities who are actively finding new ways to bring forward local voices and create community solutions in that webinar, and some more speakers to be announced. So do join us then. Look forward to seeing you then again. And also, finally, Inspiring Communities are offering free as well to the end of the year, because it's Estelle's birthday. Whoops. One-to-one community-led development clinics. These are 1 hour conversations with a CLD expert about whatever you want to talk about that is community-led development related. So there's a link on your screen, or jump onto our website and search CLD clinics to find out more and to book. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, Inspiring Communities now has a new consultancy arm. It's called Paradigm. It's written up there. It's a fresh take on a more traditional model, focused on these more innovative practices. Some of the wicked questions, the provocations that we've had today, we're trying to support, we are supporting new ways of working together, bridging some of those gaps we're all facing across our current systems at the national and the local level, so across the levels. And we're really happy to have gathered some hugely experienced people together for this work, really interested in helping organisations to work much more collaboratively, like we've been talking about from the get-go, wherever you're at, powering up capability and connections as we strengthen outcomes as well. So keep an eye out for more news on that as we look to connect with many of you to discuss those plans. I hope you've enjoyed our kōrero today. We'll share a recording and slides from the session with you soon. For now, though, I offer my thanks again to the panel. It was really a great pleasure to talk with you before today, but during the webinar as well. Awesome, really great. Always new things come out, eh? And thank you all to those that have attended today as well, and for your very thoughtful questions. We got to most of them, or some of them anyway. Hopefully that was what you wanted to hear. I will close us with a karakia now and wish you well. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapu nui. Kia wātia, kia mama, kia tēnākau. Te tinana te wairoa e te ara takatā. Koia rā e rongo, whakairia, ake ki runga, kia tina, tina, hui e, tai ki e. Go well, everybody. See you next time. Mā te wā.